Hello, Professor Kent Lee here. In this video, I'm going to talk about complex noun phrases, particularly in paraphrasing, and I'll explain what those are in a minute. So I've talked about some other paraphrasing methods in some past videos. So for example, in order to shorten contents in paraphrasing and summarizing information from sources, one thing you can do, of course, is participle phrases. We talked about participle phrases. So, for example, finding past study methods unsatisfactory, they opted for hybrid observational and survey study. So that phrase starting with finding, so that finding is a verbal adjective, a participle, which is modifying they or the researchers, the subject of the main clause, the main sentence. So finding past study methods unsatisfactory. That is a participle phrase, and it is summarizing what was originally an entire paragraph, a short paragraph, where the researchers explained, the past study methods and why they found them unsatisfactory. All those details are not important, other than to say they found them unsatisfactory. And that's not really the key point of the sentence. So this is backgrounded. A participle phrase can background information, especially when it's at the beginning of a sentence. The foreground, what you focus more on, is the main clause. They opted for a hybrid observational and survey study. So that phrase, finding past study methods unsatisfactory, is backgrounded. You kind of read it through more quickly, or if you're reading this aloud, you would say it a little more quickly, and it's a nice way to summarize some information that is relevant, but it's not the most crucial information here, but you want to keep it in and kind of de-emphasize it or background it a little bit. Also, serial verb phrases. So, for example, each of these phrases is summarizing a whole bunch of sentences in the original text, which explained in more detail how they conducted their study. So they observed English classes. Okay, that's one verb phrase. It's a main verb phrase. They coded the teacher and student behavior and administered questionnaires to the students. So observed, coded, administered. And so each of these are all main verbs, but they're conjoined together. They observed, coded, administered questionnaires to the students. Each of these phrases is summarizing what was originally a whole bunch of sentences explaining in detail the research methods. Okay, subordinate clauses. So for example, after observing classes and coding teacher-student interactions, that right there can probably summarize a whole paragraph in the original text where the researchers, the writers, are talking about how they did their observations and coding and questionnaires and stuff. So this kind of backgrounds, a subordinate clause also backgrounds information. That is, it puts kind of secondary focus on information that is secondary and leads up to the main clause. The main clause is they administered questionnaires. That is the main clause. And that gets your more attention because it's the main clause. You read it more carefully, and so the writer puts that in the main clause because that's kind of the key point of the sentence. And the after clause, that's a subordinate clause. It's not grammatical by itself. It needs to go with a main clause. In this, after observing classes, that's relevant but secondary information that logically leads up to the main clause. And so that's backgrounded. And this leads to a better flow, a better rhythm overall in the writing. Using participle phrases, subordinate clauses, and such allows you to background and foreground information, main information, the foreground and the main clauses, backgrounded stuff in subordinate clauses and participle phrases. It leads to better flow in academic writing and technical writing, professional writing. Next, we get to complex noun phrases. And a complex noun phrase is a noun that is, it's complex. It can be followed by maybe a lot of modifiers like adjectives and possessives before it, and maybe also modifiers after it, post modifiers like prepositional phrases, maybe relative clauses and such. And in this video, I'm particularly talking about complex noun phrases that are used as what's called nominalizations. So nominal means like noun, noun-like, nouny thing. It's a technical term for kind of nouny thing. So nominalization, making something into something noun-like a complex noun phrase or something that functions like a noun, but it's a complex kind of thing. So let's take a sentence like this. Number one, the chemicals were not produced because they were blocked by an inhibitor. Some biology paper. Now, you can make that flow better and kind of focus or foreground the second clause, the second part, by nominalizing the first part. So the chemicals were not produced because they were blocked. You can kind of make this flow more easily by saying production of these chemicals was blocked by an inhibitor. So production of the chemicals, that kind of gets just backgrounded a tiny bit, and you're focusing more on the verb blocking by an inhibitor. And this flows better oftentimes. So now, of course, some writers may go a little crazy with the nominalizations and it sounds really artificial, but oftentimes in academic writing, nominalizations sound nice. It flows better because it gets to the point more quickly and sentences flow better. You can pack more information more densely into a paper, especially if it's a more academic or technical or scientific paper using these things. Some more examples. Well, let's take some sentences like the U.S. Army invented a network known as ARPANET to allow for communications in case of nuclear war or other disaster. Later, the Army gave the technology to research universities who developed it into the Internet. In case you didn't know that, the Internet was first developed by the U.S. Army as a communication systems. And so we've got several main clauses with verbs like invented, gave, developed. Now, you can kind of shorten this and change the focus a little bit, change the flow with the U.S. Army's creation of the ARPANET. So, creation of the ARPANET, that is a noun followed by prepositional phrase, which is replacing a noun object form. And then U.S. Army, the subject, gets made into a possessive. The U.S. Army's creation of the ARPANET. Then you've got which. We've got a relative clause, which kind of backgrounds what follows just a tiny bit, and it's modifying creation of the ARPANET. So this was later donated to research universities. So the U.S. Army's creation of the ARPANET, that's really a complex subject. And then you've got a relative clause in between, donated. And then the main verb of this sentence is led to the development of the Internet. So developed it into the Internet gets turned into a noun, prepositional phrase, the development of the Internet. So this flows better. You've got fewer verbs and you've got more information packed in here. There's kind of a better flow, better focus, that is better use of backgrounding and foregrounding. And key information is highlighted, led to the development of the Internet. 3, the U.S. Army's creation of the ARPANET, later donated to research universities. So change the relative clause to a participle phrase, later donated to research universities. That also kind of backgrounds it. Because what's key here is the fact that this led to the development of the Internet. So it foregrounds the development and leading to the development. So that's another way to do this. Some more examples. The Army's creation of ARPANET and subsequent donation of the technology to research universities led to the development of the Internet. Okay, that's even more concise, and it might look more dense, but in academic writing, this is good style. Okay. 5, the Army's invention and donation of its ARPANET technology, so compound noun phrase, ARPANET technology, to research universities led to the development of the Internet. That's nice, short and sweet. It's getting even more concise. Or 6, use a subordinate clause. Since the Army donated its ARPANET technology to research universities, these institutions were able to develop it into the modern Internet. Okay, it's a little less concise, but using a subordinate clause to kind of background the development and donation of ARPANET. and you put more focus on the institutions developing it into the internet. Okay, that's different. More reliance on subordinate clauses, less nominalization, but compound phrases, ARPANET technology, and things like that. Some more examples. Okay, Gutenberg invented the printing press, which allowed people to disseminate information more quickly. So which, like in some of my other videos, I talked about discourse anaphors, where like a pronoun like this refers back to an entire previous concept or phrase or sentence. So which is kind of doing that here. Gutenberg invented the printing press, which allowed people to disseminate information more quickly. That's okay, but you can kind of make it flow better by nominalizing this. Gutenberg's invention of the printing press. So the subject is turned into a possessive, Gutenberg's. The verb and object are changed into a complex noun phrase, invention, followed by a prepositional phrase, invention of the printing press. And then we've got revolutionize, the dissemination of information. So instead of, I've changed the verb to revolutionize. It sounds cooler, more dynamic. And dissemination of information, that is a nominalization, a complex noun phrase that substitutes for what was previously a regular verb phrase to disseminate information more quickly. Or I could say revolutionized or allowed for or facilitated the rapid dissemination of information. You could do that too. Some more sciencey examples from a biology text again. Cell models of the development of the disease would enable us to investigate the potential methods by which it spreads, and this would allow researchers to test and develop new treatments. That's okay. I can make it a little more concise. Cell models of the development of this disease would enable investigation of its potential means of spread, which would lead to the testing and development of new treatments. That sounds a little better. Or I could say development of this disease turned into a compound phrase. Cell models of this disease's development would enable investigation of its potential means of spread, leading to the testing and development of new treatments. So that's a more complex noun phrase with a possessive, this disease's development. So those are some things you can do in writing to make your writing flow better and a little more short and sweet, a little more concise. And you're maybe not used to this if you're not used to reading academic and scientific text, but this is common. You might think, oh, these sentences are so long. And occasionally academic writers do write overly long sentences, but usually stuff like this is normal academic writing, normal scientific writing. This is considered good style. At least the examples I've given you here, it's good style. It flows nicely. It allows for more dense writing, but it has better rhythm because you got background, foreground, and allows the reader to focus on really what is the key point of each sentence. And the other stuff is maybe sort of backgrounded, or it's packaged more concisely so you can read all of this more quickly. It's more dense, but it has better flow, better style, okay, and better progression of thought. And if you could do this when you're paraphrasing and summarizing information from sources in your writing, so that your paraphrases or your source citations can flow a lot more smoothly, more concisely, more compactly, and integrate it with your own ideas. Okay, so that's it for now. You can maybe ask questions, leave questions in the YouTube comments down below if you have questions, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.